Hi, boys and girls. In today's lesson, we are going to make our salmon headpiece that we're going to wear for the salmon chant. So you're going to find a paper plate inside your science folder that's been cut to kind of look like the shape of a fish. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to get out that little plate that's been cut, and you're going to find the narrowest section, and you're going to put that to the top, because that is the fish's top fin. And I want you to make sure that you put that narrow fin at the top. The widest fins go to the side, okay? So that's the first thing you're gonna do. And you're gonna need some tools for today's activity. You're going to need a pencil, a black marker, preferably a narrow tip one, but if you only have a wide tip, just write softly when you use it. You're gonna want a red pencil or color crayon and a green pencil or green color crayon, and I also used brown. So if you just have your supplies out and ready to go, you'll be great. The other thing you will need is either some tape or a stapler, because in order to make it work, you're going to need something to attach the other pieces. So we're going to start by making the face of the salmon. So in order to make the face, what you're going to start with is making eyes. And you can make whatever kind of eyes you like. I like to make nice big eyes, because whenever I think of fish, I think big eyes. And I kind of like my fish eyes to be cartoonish, so I'm going to make them kind of cartoonish. And I'm going to give my fish a mouth. A nice big round mouth, and I'm going to put another little hole inside so it looks like its mouth is open. I also want to draw some gills in along the side, because we know that's how the salmon breathe. So I'm starting to get the look of a salmon's face. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn these pieces of the plate into fins. Now what's really cool about them is they kind of flip up, so they already look a little bit like fins, and they have some texture because fins are flexible. So what I want to do is I want to show their flexibility by making little curly lines coming down using my pencil, because the wiggly lines kind of denote movement, which we want to kind of show that the fins are flexible and can move different directions. So I'm going around and I'm doing that on all of my fins. Notice I'm using my pencil to start, because if I make a mistake, I can always go back and erase, or if there's something I want to change or adjust, I can erase with a pencil. It doesn't work so well with a crayon, and it definitely doesn't work well with a marker. So I'm going along, I'm showing movement with my wavy lines on the fins. Don't worry about making them perfect, because it's about showing movement. It'll make it look like our fish are swimming. So once I've got my fin lines drawn, I'm going to start making the scales. Now there's a trick to making scales. You kind of make a wave to begin. I'm going to show you on a little sticky note first, so that I can make it nice and big. So you start by making a wave. So you make it's almost like a flattened out U that's connected to another flattened out U. Now the trick is how you connect this line to the next line. What you want to do is you want to have it start from halfway across this U loop over to that one, because that will make it look like scales. Do you see how that switches? And then I can go back. You want to start halfway and then connect to the other half. So you don't want to have them lined up perfectly, because then it doesn't look quite as much like scales. It'll still look good, but this is really the trick to making scales. So I'm showing you the motion before we get going on the actual fish, because I wanted you to see it nice and big. Okay, So this is going to take a little bit of time because you're doing it on this whole fish's body because the salmon is completely covered in scales. So what I do is I start right at the top and I'm going to make some scales. Now notice I'm starting and I'm coming halfway, 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 halfway. Do you see how I'm layering them? You're going to want to do that. You're going to cover the entire fish. This is a great technique you can use if you want to do some other kind of art, say maybe a mermaid or a shark or something, and you want to show the scales. I love to do scales. They're kind of soothing to make. Kind of calm. It's just that motion. It's really good for your muscle development in your hand, which will help your handwriting. So this is where it gets tricky because see how the scale is going into the eye? Well, it would loop up under the eye, but I still want to make sure that I'm looping it correctly. So I kind of just have to match it, and then it's a little bit tricky. You just have to keep doing it. Now, scales don't have to look perfect. You just want to have a good time making them. So you're going to keep going until you fill the entire fish. I'm not going to fill the whole fish here for you because I want to go on and show you what you do once you've filled the entire fish. What you're going to want to do next is you're going to want to outline those scales because once you color it, the scales won't show up as much unless you've outlined them. Now I love to use a skinny black marker because it follows my lines better. So you're going to follow along your fin lines. Again, don't worry if you're not tracing them perfectly, because when you go to color it, you'll cover up some of those pencil lines. But you're going to go in and you're going to trace all of those lines so that once you color them, they'll stand out more. Because it's hard to tell right now because it's all white. But it won't show up quite as well with pencil once you add the color to the fish, okay? So I'm going through and I'm tracing my fin lines. Again, I'm not going to do the whole fish because I want you to have enough time to go on and do your own fish. I don't want to take all your time watching me do it. It's much more fun to do your own. So once you've got all the fins traced, then you do the tracing of the scale lines. You'll notice they stand out a lot more when you trace them in black marker. And if you don't have a black marker, you can always go back over and just trace really hard with your pencil, because the thing is you just don't want them to fade once you color, because that effect of the scales is very, very cool. Really makes it look like a fish. So again, you're going to keep going until you finish tracing all of the scales. Okay, so I'm not going to finish that up, but I just wanted you to get an idea of what you're going to do. And sometimes I'll go back and I'll erase the lines after if I didn't match them up, just so they'll look cleaner. You don't have to do that, but that's just something I like to do. The other thing that you're going to want to do is you're really going to want to make those eyes stand out. So you're going to want to trace those, and I like to trace it a couple of times so that it makes a wider line, because I really want those eyes to stand out. Because remember, they have those big black green eyes. So I'm going to really trace that so that they stand out. Now I did it a lot wider on the outside of the eye, not quite as wide on the inside. And I'm going to do the same thing with the mouth. I want that to stand out because once you color, it doesn't stand out quite as much. And the gills, those are important to make them nice and wide. And I like to make them sharp on the end and then a little bit fatter on the inside, kind of a little bit like a really narrow crescent moon. You don't want to forget those gills because that's how the fish are going to breathe, right? Okay, once your fish is all finished and you've got the scales traced, the fins traced, the eyes traced, and the mouth, the gills, you're ready to move on to the coloring. So I'm going to show you one that I worked on ahead of time, and I'm going to show you the coloring that I did. I took a lot more time on this one, so I made the scales much smaller. But you'll notice the coho, I colored it the way it looks when it's a spawner. You know, when they come back and they've changed colors. So it's kind of a light green on top that kind of blends into a darker red on the bottom. And you'll notice that the fins are colored fairly lightly. So I want to show you what I do when I color it in. I'm coloring it in on the top. I'm coloring it green because on the top of the fish is mainly green when they come back as spawners. Now, if you want to color yours silver like they look in the ocean, that's fine too. If you want to make yours a smolt with the markings on the side, you're welcome to do that. You can color it the way you want, but I'm just showing you how a coho spawner would look if you colored it like a spawner. So you notice that I'm coloring all of this in. I'm coloring all of this in. And then partway through, the color starts to change because that's what they really look like as spawners, which we've seen some pictures of them. So we know that that's how they change. So I've got it changed, and then it changes to a dark red. So I'm coloring in the red. I colored a little bit of it ahead of time, just so we wouldn't have to spend so much time with you watching me color. But I'm coloring it in a red. But this is the trick, because on the fish, it isn't just a line of green and then a line of red. It kind of blends together. So you'll notice that I took my pencil and I'm kind of adding some green in with the red. And you can see how it's kind of blended. And I did the same thing over here on the fins. And the fins are going to be much lighter because if you've ever looked at a fish's fins, they're often a little bit transparent. You can almost see through them. And that's because they're so thin that they can move and have a lot more flexibility, and they're just amazing creatures and the things that they have. So you might add a little red to the fin, but don't make it too dark because their fins are pretty light. So I'm adding some down here too, but notice I blended the green and the red. When I get closer to the bottom, I'm going to color it way more red because you might remember how dark red they get on their sides. Okay, and then for the mouth, I did a really dark red. And then fish's eyes can be very interesting. So I started out with a green, colored it in real dark because their eyes are pretty dark, if you remember. And then I layered with a little bit of brown to give it kind of that muddy look that they have, or that darker look. So I just layered it with that so that their eyes are nice and dark. So once your salmon is all the way colored, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to add something to make it attach to your head because you're making it into a headpiece. So what you're going to want to do is get a couple of pieces of paper. I'm using some recycled paper because let's recycle, right? Recycle, reuse. So I'm going to take my paper, I'm going to fold it in half the hot dog way, and then I'm going to fold it in half again the hot dog way. So then I've got this nice thick piece of paper, because I'm so sorry, but I totally forgot to give you your pieces to attach your headpiece. So, but I'm sure you have some paper you can recycle. And then I'm going to do the same thing because I'm going to need 2 of them. So I'm going to do the hot dog fold, and then I'm going to do the hot dog fold again. And this is where you're going to need your stapler or your tape. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to flip your fish over, and you're going to attach the piece of paper to the side fin. Now I want you to notice you don't attach it to the part that flips out, because if you do that, then the fish fins won't move so much, and you want them to be able to move. So you're going to attach it to the round part. And I'm going to go ahead and tape it, because then it'll be easier to staple. So I'm going to tape it down, and I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm going to tape it down. So now you've got it. Now when I flip it over, you're going to see that it's coming out the sides of the fish. Do you see how it's coming out the sides of the fish? So those fins can still move. And then I'm going to take my stapler, and I'm just going to staple them because I don't want those to fall off. And then what you're going to do from there is you're going to lift it up on your head, and this little fin is going to go over your nose, and this is going to go across your forehead. And these will be above your ears. And then you're going to ask mom or dad to help you tape it or staple it so it fits your head, because you're going to wear it so that you can still see. It's kind of popped up on the front of your head, and it's going to be face down. So, and I'll show you what that looks like in my video for the salmon practice. I'll put mine on so you can see what that looks like. But again, remember, you hook it to the back. Make sure you're hooking it so the fins can still move. Okay? And then you're going to attach it to your head by making it into kind of a little headband. So this is your salmon headpiece, and I can't wait to see yours when you do the salmon chant. So thanks for listening today. Good luck on your headpiece.